podcast where our mission is to offer thoughtful and inspiring parenting and educational programming. We are committed to producing impactful podcasts that add value to conversations around education, student advocacy, and parental challenges. My name is Heather Moore, and I'm the head of school at Strelitz International Academy in Virginia Beach, and I will be your host. I have over 28 years of experience in independent schools, with 8 years as a head of school and 20 years serving as an independent school chief financial officer. I also have raised 2 children, one finishing medical school and one starting law school, and have been married to my wonderful husband for over 31 years. Joining us on today's episode is Dr. Helen Crompton, Executive Director of the Research Institute for Digital Innovation in Learning and Professor of Instructional Technology at ODU. And she is here today to share her wealth of knowledge related to artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and education. Welcome, Dr. Crompton. We're so happy to have you with us today.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
So there's so much out in the news, social media, everywhere. All you hear about is ChatGPT and AI and how it's going to change all of our lives. And really being in education, many times we're kind of resistant to that. Like, we're concerned about what is that going to do to, learning and creativity and how our students master concepts and apply them in their everyday life. We're all afraid as teachers that it's going to reduce their knowledge base, reduce their learning, because they're just going to become reliant on some sort of technology to do the work for them. That's what everyone's afraid of in general, especially educators. I would say that we're probably kind of behind the curve. Most other fields out there probably are utilizing it. It's probably just not as much of a concern to them as it is to an educational institution. So it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say today and how, schools can embrace AI, schools, how they can embrace ChatGPT and other programs like that. So let's just kick it off before we really get deep into it. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I finished school at 16 in the UK, and I went into education straight away. And I actually worked with children with severe behavioral problems.
Oh, wow.
For a good few years. These were children that got expelled from 2 to 3 schools before they ended up at our school. Quite often they were called the unteachables. They were absolutely wonderful students that had really difficult backgrounds already at a young age.
Yeah.
And I found technology to kind of hook them. And so that was very exciting. So I kind of dived into technology. That's where my interest came. And I then found, wow, this technology is actually helping them learn. We can use it in many ways as a hook for drawing them in and then to learn. So I did that, went into mainstream schools, then I went into higher education, moving to the US, and studied mathematics education, who hate technology often. So I kind of mixed that with technology as well. So I got technology education and mathematics education for the PhDs and went into higher ed. The big change for me was, I'm going into higher ed, but it needs to make a difference to the classroom.
Yeah.
I can't do writing on paper that's going to go out to academics and not make a difference.
Yeah.
So that was my passion in going in. I want to find answers for teachers. What are these technologies? What do they do? What do we need to know? And so that is what I do now. So it ties
research, right into being a classroom educator as well.
That's it. That's exactly. So, yes, I work with teachers, those wanting to do the PhDs, up to that in education technology.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's a very interesting background.
Yes.
But you stayed in education the whole time. So I think that's
very
amazing.
Passionate. Yeah, very passionate about
PhD
education.
in mathematics. That's, okay.
And the technology, so...
Yeah. That's impressive. Very, very impressive. Speaking of impressive, I have to just say that when I read your bio, I noticed that it said that you have been recognized for your outstanding contributions. Dr. Crompton has achieved a place on Stanford's esteemed list of the top 2% of scientists in the world. I just think that's amazing. Congratulations for that achievement.
Thank you.
You should be so proud.
In some ways, though, it's not hard because it's like a hobby.
Yeah.
would I do? So it's kind of, well done, you've done well in your hobby.
Yeah.
You know?
That's how it feels to you, but to others, I don't know. Okay, let's just get right into it. How do you envision the integration of AI in education, and what role do you see ChatGPT or, other programs like ChatGPT, because I know there's so many out there, playing in that context?
So I can see it having huge positive effects as well as possibilities for huge negative effects. It's all about how we use it and what we're going to do with it. So you could have the realm of, this is a tool that can help us do magical things in education, be able to do things that we've never done before.
Yeah.
And that is the role of technology. We want it not to replace what we've always done.
Yeah.
But to do something that really helps students learn. Like, we can have them debating on a topic, we can have it going back and forth, having these discussions. We can also use ChatGPT, though. We can ignore it as educators and have students using it to find misinformation or to cheat on projects and do the work for them. So it all depends. The big crux of this is the educator. In how we are using these tools, how we are teaching students to use these tools properly.
Okay. Interesting. I think that's a very valid point. It all depends on that educator and what she's doing or he is doing in their classroom, how they choose to embrace this technology, that whether we all like it or not, it is here. And whether they can set the parameters and use it in their own classroom, in order to increase learning versus, things that people are afraid might happen because they're using it.
Yes.
Makes sense.
The concern as well is for those educators that are ignoring it.
Yeah.
So a lot of technologies, I go and present and I'll say, oh, this is a great technology. And I know that some people will take it and use it, and some people will say, no, it's not right. I'm not at this time. I've got all these technologies I'm focused on, and I'd rather that happen.
Yeah.
With ChatGPT, it is very different. Than all those educators that are ignoring it, students are not ignoring it.
Right, exactly. Students are not ignoring it.
So they're going to be using it.
And it's interesting to me that, I asked you earlier about, do you think that children in elementary school, elementary age children, do you think that they're using some of this technology out there? And your response was?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, just think of this thing that answers all sorts of questions. I mean, how many times are we around young students? They're the ones that ask a ton of questions.
They do.
And this thing will answer those questions.
Yeah. So obviously they're going to be using it because they're curious. They have curious minds.
Yes.
So, okay. Let's see. In what ways can AI technologies, particularly ChatGPT, enhance the learning experience for students? How do you see it enhancing learning?
Oh, it's a great tool for critical thinking skills. We can, like I said, have it doing those activities that we couldn't have doing before. ChatGPT is a conversational agent.
Okay.
So just think about how much learning goes on during conversations where we have those just-in-time learning experiences where it'll ask a question and then it'll say, the students will say, what about that? What about that? What about that? And it has non-stop energy. It will answer any question at any time. I mean, student can go on for hours, days, asking questions. And so it can do things really, really well. So I mentioned before about the debates. It can do things like have a discussion on a topic, like, why do aeroplanes stay in the air? How does that happen? And they can learn so much from those. So we can also have teachers saying, okay, I've done this lesson for so long. I really need to add more critical thinking to it. I need to change it in a way that helps students learn. So they can even put a lesson plan that they've designed into ChatGPT and say, okay, critique this lesson plan. I want this lesson plan to be more this, this, this.
Right.
And it can provide that. Or this lesson plan is going to be for this students who are struggling with this. How can I change it to be more dramatic on learning? What can we do with it? And it can help. So the ideas for using it is endless, really.
Yeah.
We just have to think how to use it.
So it's just the next latest greatest tool. I think you had also mentioned there's been 3 major changes or developments in education. What were those?
So, and this sounds very dramatic, but it's not dramatic enough. So for people listening, there are 3 major changes in education. This isn't just a technology that's just kind of a fad and the next one that's come along. This is major in global what's going to happen. So the first one was the Gutenberg printing press. The fact that those could have prints from every walk of life. It wasn't just for people in a certain religion or that had money. Mm-hmm. Everybody could have information through books, print.
Right.
So that's the first one. The second one was, of course, the internet.
Right.
Home of ubiquitous answers. And then ChatGPT is the third one. And we're already seeing, it's a year in, and we're already seeing huge changes. And it's interesting that a lot of people don't realize how many changes, because these AI systems now are in a lot of different things. All we notice is things are working better.
Right.
We're, getting better answers to what we're asking. So big game changers.
So maybe it would help people to understand. Tell me, what's the difference between Googling something and then using ChatGPT to try to get some information? What's the difference between those two things?
Yep. So Google actually does have artificial intelligence in the background, just not this particular type, this transformer type AI. So what it does, you go into Google, everyone's Googled, you search for something to answer a question perhaps, and it'll give you websites.
Okay.
And you go into the websites to find your answer.
Right. You
but
still have to
good
research.
Ones. Yes, although I always say that advertisements, we get a lot more of those because obviously Google get a lot of their revenue from those advertisements. So we're seeing a lot of that. ChatGPT, the difference is when you ask your question, it tells you directly the answer. So it doesn't tell you go look in these different places. It just literally says, here it is.
Okay.
So an example, I Google, I go into Google and I'll say, okay, what is the Doppler effect? And it will send you to places to find out it. If you put that into ChatGPT, it will specifically go into details on what the Doppler effect is. No, that's kind of a high-end one. Hopefully you're going to Google now to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Google or ChatGPT, we're going to have to change our language, aren't we? But yes, it goes direct to the answer.
Okay, so what do you say to people who are very concerned about that, ChatGPT and all of these programs out there like that are going to be used for cheating? What do you say to people that have that big concern?
Yes, I say that they are. Without
They're already doing that.
They're already doing it, yes. They are definitely going to be using it. So it depends on educators and whoever else by changing the assignments so that can't happen. But at times, in life, we want a direct answer. So This is great. But in education, we want students to go through the process of thinking and working things out. It's like a calculator. That's a kind of another example that when we learn like long division, we learn it, and then as life goes on, we'd never sit down and say, well, I know how to do long division, so I'm going to work it all out on paper. We use the calculator.
Right, you're right.
So with ChatGPT, it's going to offload some of those tasks. That's what we want it to do things that we know. Like if I want a paragraph on something or if I want a description on something for somebody, yes, you can use it for that. But in education, that learning matters. So we need to adapt assignments so that learning happens.
Yeah.
And then they can use it later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. 2 thoughts come to my mind. I heard somebody say recently that when we were having a discussion about AI and programs like ChatGPT, they said maybe we have to adjust our definition of cheating. That's an interesting concept.
That is interesting.
As we move forward in this world of AI, we may have to rethink that a little bit.
Yes.
So that's just one interesting comment. I would also say, because there is so much AI built into so many things, I recently, which I already mentioned to you, but I recently watched a TED Talk about something called Khan Amigo, which is Khan Academy's version of AI. And what I thought was so interesting about it, and I do recommend actually parents out there, if you're listening to this, you might want to look into that, because it's basically a one-on-one tutor for a student, which they were explaining that instead of being worried that we aren't going to retain the information, we're not going to master the content, we're not going to learn this information ourselves, which as educators, that's our job. We want them to master the content. They found through research that actually by using a one-on-one tutor for students who were below average were becoming average or above average. Students who were average were becoming above average, because having this one-on-one tutor is like having your own teacher coaching you through the process of whatever it is you're trying to learn, whether it's something mathematics or, writing, grammar, vocab, science, who knows what it is, but having your own personal one-on-one coach helping to coach you through the process, they actually saw huge improvements, leaps and bounds in students' level of ability. So that's very, to me, positive, interesting way that we could look at using AI in the future in education.
Yes. Just to add on to that then, what's happening, Khan Amigo, is thinking of the prompts to ask these technologies, the AI.
Right.
That's what it's doing special. So going back into the basic versions, ChatGPT, you could have students, what we need to do is have them asking the best questions, which again is top of blooms, in creating. We also want them to critically think about what do they want to know and it's called prompt engineering.
Okay.
So it's thinking about how to ask those questions, but it can be difficult, especially for young children. That's why Khan Amigo have adapted this, that it knows the type of prompts that a student could want. So rather than having to think of them, they look and go, yeah, that's what I want. And they can click and say, yes,
okay,
I want to ask that.
That's interesting.
So
they can kind of base it on the age of the student, I would imagine, that they're working with potentially, or?
Yes, and it's learning from the students. And like if they get stuck on something, they might have a question. So it's kind of, do you want to know this? So it's constantly kind of thinking of the prompt. So it's doing an extra step.
That's interesting. And so being that we happen to be an IB school, we're all about having children ask questions. We want them to be
crucial.
Engaged. We want them to have agency in their own learning. We want them to guide some of their own learning. And as the teacher in the room, we're trying to facilitate that versus, that whole very old-fashioned frontal knowledge. I have the wisdom and I'm going to impart it on you.
Yep.
We've really changed that as an IB school. And we try to guide our students to find the right answer themselves rather than I know the answer and I'm going to share it with you. So it promotes the critical thinking and the asking the questions. So even though you're going to be using something like ChatGPT, you still have to know what to ask.
Yes. Even the goals right at the beginning. Okay, start of class, this is the objective. This is what I'm supposed to be studying.
Yeah.
Okay, what do I need to know then?
Yeah.
Let's go from scratch. What do I need to know? And then it'll help with the questions along the way as well. But they have ownership on, okay, this is what I'm learning today.
Yeah. Okay, so how about this? How do you know that the information you're getting out of AI, ChatGPT, any of them, how do you know this information is accurate?
So you don't. That is why it's very important. Digital literacy is a skill that we're all going to have to really, really develop really well, in that we could ask it for something and some of that information might be inaccurate. It's like, and my husband always reminds me, when you're following Google Maps, you have to have kind of some idea which way you should be going. You can't just, like if it says drive into this and there's a lake in front of you, it's kind of, you've got to actually use your intelligence to look and critically analyze what it's putting out to make sure it's correct. Like teachers, when we do write lesson plans, or if we're asking for a formula on something, we do have to critically look and don't just presume it's telling us accurate things all the time, because it doesn't.
Okay.
Most of the time it does, but it still gets a lot wrong.
How do you know if it's wrong? That's the other thing. I mean, I mean, how would you know it's wrong? Especially if you're a student, I guess, but I don't know. I just wonder, how would you know if it was wrong? And then also, let's say you do know. Let's say you ask it something intentionally incorrectly so that you can see what the response is. What do you do about that when that happens?
Yeah, you can ask it. Say, is that right? I don't think it is. Can you please recheck your answer? And you can ask it to do all sorts of things like that. You can never know, though. It's, like I said, most of the time it's accurate, but you open a textbook and that textbook might be inaccurate at this point. It might, because, I mean, textbooks aren't fully always vetted, you know, to make sure everything. Right. So that's where we're always critical consumers of knowledge. We just have to get students familiar with that constantly.
Okay. I mean, that's an interesting point. But, okay, so there is a place, though, that you can report it if you know that it's given you something that's wrong.
Yes,
so that
usually,
they can work on, okay.
Yes, in fact, even just saying, are you sure this seems wrong?
Oh, okay.
It automatically takes it into the system and flags it up.
Okay.
But you can also, usually there's a button somewhere on there that says, report or correct this. So, because they're always wanting to learn, because the algorithm just can keep developing constantly.
I do think what's so interesting about it as I'm listening to you is just that it's more like you're having a conversation with somebody like you and I are right now. You can basically have a conversation with ChatGPT. To me, that's very interesting. I guess that's a huge difference between I'm going to Google that versus whatever the new word's going to be. I don't know. I'm going to ChatGPT that. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that, but maybe that's where we're headed. But I do like that it's more of a conversation. And you can keep adding to the stream. Once you get your first response, you can ask it something else related to what you just asked. So.
Yeah, huge time saver as well. It's so annoying if you had to, remember this bit or this bit, and it's just, it's so nice. It's like talking to a person with a great deal of knowledge. And in many ways, going back to your other thing, when you're talking to a person, an expert, how do you know they're always accurate every single time?
Yeah, you don't.
They're probably not.
You're right. That's very true. I mean, we just all assume because somebody claims to be an expert in something that they're not wrong about it, but that's true. What ethical considerations should be taken into account when we're implementing AI and ChatGPT and all these great things? What do we need to be thinking about?
So there's various ethical considerations. From the big one is make sure students know that if they're using it, it's not human, because it seems very human-like. A side note as well, for especially young children, I would always model good manners. People forget things like this, but I would always let students know it's not human, but you want to still be polite.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, side note, like Alexa, artificial intelligence, there was research done on families, and what happened was they found that adults were talking to Alexa, never using manners, never saying please, thank you, and sometimes even shouting. Students were modeling that then when they interacted with people.
Oh, wow.
So people often forget that, but we need to model to students, I would like this, please. And always showing manners and things as we go along. So I think that's an ethical consideration in the world that we live in, that we want a more friendly, polite world. So the other one is not putting information in there that shouldn't go into there, because it goes into a large, very large kind of database, large language model.
Right.
So that goes into there and it stays and gets mixed in with everything else. So we want to have students and even adults just remembering that not to put things in there that we wouldn't want people to know.
Okay.
Personal details.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I saw something, and I don't remember where I saw this. Maybe it was on the news. Who knows where I saw it? But somebody was talking about how corporations are getting concerned about ChatGPT because their employees are putting all this information into it.
Secrets.
Corporate secrets, but they're trying to create a a memo about whatever, who
Yes.
knows what it is, and then they've put this information in there that is their trade secret for their company.
Yeah.
So I guess that's certainly an ethical consideration
It
in a
is.
lot of ways. So
Oh, yeah. Yes. Google actually sent an email out to all their staff saying if you're using ChatGPT, don't put any Google information in there.
that's so
They had to
interesting.
remind people, but yeah.
But I mean, it's a very valid point. If we're using it to help us write an email or write a memo or write a letter as part of our job,
Yes.
you could easily be putting information out there that maybe you
Yes.
shouldn't be, without intentionally doing it, of course, but just,
Yeah.
I don't know where it goes. I don't know how somebody could find it, but I guess they could.
Yes, maybe it can appear on somebody else's feed coming out. But usually it knocks off names. I mean, the algorithm behind it does these things, but we just don't want to do it. So if we want ChatGPT to write a letter to a parent, we wouldn't use names and things, but you could still have a letter.
Yeah.
Even if it was a kind of a negative letter about someone's behavior, that'd be okay putting that out because there'd be no connection back
Right.
to who it is. And
Yeah.
it might actually help another teacher, right?
Yeah,
A
that's
letter.
true. That's true. What about people who are trying to use it to do evil things, let's say? Who knows? Something like that.
Yes. Finding information. So Google, if you ask Google for a lot of information, it'll give it you. A lot of these generative AI won't now. However, for negative things, these are very, very powerful tools. They can do really magical, wonderful things. They can also be used for the very opposite.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful. We're in a different time at the moment. I tell people, be very, very careful of everything. Like if you think about these generative AI models, they produce text, audio, images, video. So we have to be, again, our digital literacy has to be completely ramped up because all the things that we did before to identify if a person was real have
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
Have gone. I mean, banking systems are really going to have to figure a lot of things out. But you can talk to a generative AI program for 15 seconds and it has your voice.
Oh, wow.
And it could mimic your voice. So for
That sounds
parents,
dangerous to me.
Very dangerous. And I don't want to be kind of scaremongering, but people need to be aware. Things like the one that's out at the moment that nefarious bad people are using are things like they're calling somebody and getting them to say something for 15 seconds. Then they're calling somebody else, often the parents,
Oh, wow.
using their voice, saying, "Oh, I really need my bank details. I'm so sorry. I need it urgently. It's got to be quick." And and they're giving them the bank details because they've got that audio sound. So we have to just be careful. Like emails, we check the email address, you check the phone number on the phone.
Yeah.
And another telltale sign is it's always absolutely urgent that they've got to do it quick.
Right.
So it's terrible because our children, might have an emergency,
Yeah.
but you'd have to do other things to check. Check the phone number, check where it's coming from.
Yeah, that
So-
makes sense. I mean, I guess you have to make sure that you validate whatever it is before you respond under
That's
pressure, under crisis.
That's it. And I know that's for older children, but then just like younger videos, we have to be very careful what we see and what we believe. So we're in a very different world. These are the extremes.
Yeah.
And they're very kind of interesting, but at the same time, the big telltale sign from this is we need digital literacy. We need to be more aware and critical thinkers ourselves, like, where is this posted? Where is this from?
Yeah.
And we have to kind of protect ourselves and our families.
Well, I mean, there's certainly a lot of great things about it that I think are exciting and can be
Super exciting.
huge time savers, beneficial to education, both for a student and a teacher.
Yes.
Creating lesson plans for teachers, creating different leveled assessments for teachers. These are things that teachers have, they spend hours doing.
Yes, away from the children.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, I can see it as being a very valuable tool for students, helping, tutoring them, the one-on-one
Yes.
coaching. I can see
Yeah.
that being very, very valuable. But obviously there are some other things that if we're not careful, could certainly go the wrong direction, I guess.
We're just going to know about those things and change them to the positive. It's just knowing to be then working for the positive. And there are so many amazing things. This is going to revolutionize education. You started the podcast talking about different fields.
Yeah.
And imagine going for surgery and the surgeon comes out and he has a saw in his hand and said, well, it's a tool. We used it for years. It was great. Why should we change? It's not acceptable in those fields.
Yeah.
In medicine, you want them to be using the latest and greatest. I want you to be using AI. I want you to be using all these things to make the best decisions possible and the best treatment.
Right.
In education, we want the best for students as well. And these tools, I am really excited. 16 years as an educator, I would have loved these programs while I was teaching because you can do super exciting things. Have ChatGPT create a game, a play to cover a topic. If someone's not understanding something, you can ask it to explain it in a simpler way and use that to explain. There's just so many. I've got, like I said, that lesson plan and I need it to be so much better. Help me with this lesson plan. Help me explain to the students this concept that's struggling.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many endless possibilities. At our school, we use a program called Toddle and to do unit planning for our units of inquiry as an IB school. And they have added AI technology into that program. So our teachers are dipping their toes into that and starting to utilize it a little bit. And one of the great pieces of feedback that I've received from them so far is that it's giving them new ideas for field trips that, go along with that unit of inquiry, something that they've probably done over and over for several years.
Yes.
And now it's giving them some new ideas of different ways to enhance that learning, which that I absolutely love. I think that's really exciting.
Yes.
How about some fun ways you can use ChatGPT? It's not for work. It's not for school. What can you do just for fun?
Things. And so I always have trouble with thinking how to say happy birthday to somebody. You have to write things on social networks. I can spend hours and it'll be like 2 sentences long by the end of it. It can help with things like that. And it's not bypassing. It's things like I'll say to ChatGPT, okay, my friend is about to turn 60. She loves drinking wine and loves horses. Write a quick poem for her, that I can give for a birthday, or write a comment that I can put on Facebook. You can use it for that.
Cute.
So it's kind of cute. And these things take time to think about, especially for me. But you can also do it things like at the start of the year, we're all thinking about diets and healthy eating and things. And so you could say to ChatGPT, okay, write me a meal plan for the week. Write my dinners for the week, perhaps, make it shorter. And give me the shopping list to go with all those meals. Okay, write me a set of meals. I don't like garlic and I want to include more fiber. Give me a set of meals for that. Again, shopping list. Give me the instructions how to make it.
That's
each
great.
meal.
Another time saver, really.
Huge time savers. Or I have people coming round for a party, a dinner party. Give me some ideas of conversation starters, games, whatever. Like children's parties, it is so good. You could say, okay, I want party games for this age range, for this, what they like, and can give details. And again, you can give details, that's okay. You just don't put names and addresses. But you can put all these details in, and it can provide a ton of games, some real fun ones.
That's a great idea. Also, this kind of the same concept as the teachers getting, new field trip ideas.
Exactly.
You could get some new birthday party ideas. That's a wonderful use for it, actually, because you probably feel like you do the same thing over and over again in those areas as well.
And you can even say, think of something very different that people don't use.
Yeah.
I want it on this theme. Give me all the things on unicorns or whatever theme.
I love it. All right. Well, I really thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise. we are truly entering some new territory, uncharted territory in the field of education and AI, and basically the world in AI, really.
Yes.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next several years. Again, I thank you for joining us today. I thank all of our listeners for taking the time to join us. Please give us feedback on our podcast. And if you have found value in today's episode, we hope that you'll subscribe, you'll share, or you'll follow us. You can also visit our website at www.stralitzinternationalacademy.org for more information about this episode, as well as some resources and tips from today's episode. And please remember, it takes a whole community to build a strong foundation for our children to grow and develop. On behalf of SIA, thank you for joining us today, and I thank you for your partnership.